Hello. Okay. Hello and welcome to Contain Strong Language. My name's Rudi Bremer, and typically I am the host of Awaye on Radio National, which is the Indigenous Arts and Culture program. But much more important than that, I'm a Gamilaroi woman with family ties to Pilliga in northwest New South Wales. And the reason I say that that is much more important than what I do in my job is because who we are as mob grounds so much of what we do. And so does the land we come from. Although I've lived, learned and worked most of my life here, I am still a visitor on Gadigal country. And with that in mind, I pay my respect to Gadigal country as the land on which we're meeting. And I pay my respect to the elders, past and present. And extend that respect to my panellists and other First Nations people joining us today. You'll get to know them through our discussion and their work, but let me very quickly introduce you to our poets. We have Lulu Houdini, Daniel Browning, who is also my boss and not at all disconcerting or stressful to have him on a stage with me, Rob Waters and Nicole Smede. So please join me in welcoming them. We are here to talk about poetry, so I'm going to actually start by getting Nicole to read for us.
Thank you, Rudi. It's such a privilege to be here with you all today and to be reading poetry with language on Gadigal land. And I'd just like to acknowledge how honoured and privileged I am to be able to speak language. So many of us and our generations before us did not have that opportunity to speak their truths in their tongue. And it's such a blessing, and I don't take that lightly. This is Gili Dulu, light and sound of footsteps. First, they say, after Gili, light, and divine Dulu, the sound of footsteps, was the word, that we hold the frequency of Mirin stars in our Galung bones. But we have no name for their word. We have Nyun Guba Gudi, her song, the sacred, Gunungang, older than Juya, talk. Her melodies, Baraya, sing, soft petals press on mossy barai, earth, sustain the calls of bellbirds in Gundari and Wurruma, Angafora trees and wind. Aingara, listen, matcha fingers run across keys cool as batu, water, while her harmonies move uniting Garuwa, Garuwa, oceans and oceans. Cradled in her curve, I share her sonorous Nyukka gift, born of inspiration, Gunungang, older than Juya, talk, through a body made of Gili Dulu, light and sound of footsteps ringing out.
So, Nicole, when it comes to First Nations languages, plural, there is a real economy of words because our words, there is literally not as many words in our languages as there are in English. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of dual meanings, a lot of poetics, basically. Mm-hmm. When you are writing poetry using language and kind of layering the economy of First Nations languages over the economy of poetry, which is its own kind of thing, I mean, how do you actually create the double layer?
I feel like language makes me a better poet. I write in English first, and then when I translate it into language, so that piece had Gatang, my ancestral language, woven into it. Like you said, there's not always the right word to match the English meaning. I find that there, more often than not, is a much more beautiful word in language that has a richer and a deeper meaning, and being able to use that in my poetry just takes it to a whole new level. That wasn't mine, it wasn't my thinking. It was like, wow, my ancestors were such poets. So that's my approach, and I'm just, blown away and thankful that I am able to use language in that way to make my work better.
Rob, I'm curious about the role that you see country playing in the way that you write poetry, because country and language are so deeply connected and kind of interlinked.
Yeah, I think country, like our languages were born from country. They are country. So to try to disconnect them from place, or disconnect language from place, is just, it's I can't get my head around it. Yeah, our language was born from Mother Earth. Our words for different places are their actual names. that they've given to us. Yeah, that Willie Wagtail, the Jiddy Jiddy, up home, you know, you listen to his song, he sings his own name to us. So I think, yeah, to try to talk about them in the separateness doesn't make sense. I think like country is language is country, but it is poetry. You know, that's the beauty of our languages.
Flick the page over. So, Lulu, I know that identity is one of a number of themes that exist in your poetry. And I'm wondering if the mechanics and the artistry of poetry is a way to be confessional without necessarily confessing anything.
I don't know if I'm doing mechanics or anything quite technical when I write poetry. Yeah, as a way to be quite confessional. Yeah, I think there's a real power and responsibility as well, like as a black woman, to localise yourself and declare who you are, who your people were, and the voice that, you know, like I have my voice now because of those women. So yeah, I think that I can declare my identity in writing. I can declare my identity in the work that I do. Yeah, I've never really considered it as a declaration, but now that you say that, it is. It's actually quite, like, the undercurrents of that intentionality definitely are there. Yeah.
We are going to pepper some poetry through our talk. So, Daniel, would you like to read for me?
Sure. This is a poem called Bunjalung for Queer, and it wrestles with a question about, cultural precedents and my right to exist. And if there's no word in for that describes me, how do I make sense of the world? It's all about that kind of tradition. Bunjalung for queer. I'm Bunjalung, I'm queer. What does it mean to be both? When they came, they didn't ask us how we classified the genders, the fluid, the free, the non-sexual. Their world only knew the binary, one sexual orientation. They knew, of course, that the universe is full of variance, not contradiction. The ancestors watched the male emu, Nurani, tend the nest. The extravagant displays of the male satin bowerbird, Dulum, and his brother, the regent bowerbird, Najunga. What words did they use to describe people like us? Their own mob, who they'd never disown. How did they enlarge their sense of family to include every soul born into it for 1,000 generations? And if there's no word that describes me, do I cease to exist? In some dialects, bugamwi means to have sexual desire. It's a verb intransitive. You could use it as a prefix and attach it to the thing you lust after. It seems crude. We are more than just the object of our desire. The adjective and noun suffix gali means typified by, fond of. So you get nurum gali, sleepy. Wajigali, talkative. Nangangali, fond of food. So in my dialect we have Dubai gali, literally woman lover, woman mad, woman type. The dictionary has it in parentheses, usually masculine. But if you add the feminine suffix gan, you get Dubai galigan, a woman fond of women. Am I just Maragan gali, fond of men? But I am more than just the thing I love. Maybe they would call us Jalan, rainbow. Jalani Bal, rainbow people, rainbow clan, rainbow mob, the people who say rainbow. I don't believe in mirages. For certain, I am Gijagani, old man. Maybe we are Narangbil, the people from the other side. Naring means across, the other side of the river. The verb intransitive, naringa, means to go across, go over, to cross over. To go over. is Naringalala. Am I just Galagir, the Bunjalung word for single man? Would we call each other Jija, sister? Are we Janabi Nyubani, literally they spouse, a term for non-biological family? We like suffixes in Bunjalung. The suffix gay denotes neutral gender. It's what they call enclitic, barely audible. Fireflies, a jange. If there's no word that describes me, no Bunjalung for queer, do I cease to exist? P.S. I don't know the answer, but I know my ancestors.
So, Daniel, you are, I've already said, you're my boss. You work at ABC, you are a journalist, you are a radio broadcaster, you're the editor of ABC Indigenous Radio. So you're no stranger to sharing your thoughts, or your voice. But what does poetry create, or what space does it create for you in terms of storytelling that you can't necessarily do through other spaces?
I would say that poetry for me is kind of a really free space and really open and wild and unrestrained, and in it you can say a lot of things that you wouldn't say ordinarily. I mean, you can use it to inhabit the skin of another person in a way, by which I mean not to take someone's identity, but to think thoughts that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily think. Like, you can be so totally free. I mean, my university education told me that poetry is one of the most kind of rule-bound disciplines, rule-bound forms of expression, forms of literature. But that may well be the case. But I don't kind of write a classical poetry. It's just, for me, what I say is poetry, for all the questions that don't have answers, there's poetry. Like everything that we can't otherwise reconcile or truly understand, or the deep searching that's inside each of us for something outside of us or within us, I don't know. All those questions, poetry is the answer. And for me, that's where I find true, is it relief? I don't know what it is. A sense of, in just saying that, I've said what it's the most powerfully, deeply personal thing I could ask the universe. And I didn't answer it, but the experience was really instructive.
I mean, that actually brings to mind last night at the Red Room Poetry Gala, Ali Cobby Eckermann read some of her work, and there was a line that I wrote down where she talked about her work as it is free of form but not of truth-telling. And it was I got chills in that moment, and I had to look like that jerk that pulls out their phone so that I remembered it. But I think there's something really...
I would say that, the idea that there should be any rule around, even me saying what I said, I'm not saying to every black fellow that you should, write poetry the way I do, or it should be full of this, it should contain all this, big stuff. It doesn't have to. It can be so small. It can be just the most kind of irrational thought. It doesn't have to be anything that I say. It doesn't have to be anything that anyone says. It's such a personal practice, really. It's like a meditation.
I love how you mentioned that in your university, learnings that poetry is like the most rule-bound. And it's like the thing that I love about poetry for me is the breaking of those rules and bending and exploring myself and my engagement with the world through poetry that I can't do in an essay, that I can't do in
And you
justice.
don't have to argue a point.
No.
You know, it doesn't matter. You're the only. You're the oracle.
Yeah.
So it's like your world through your guts. Like it's so visceral for me,
Yes.
and it doesn't. You don't have to convince anyone of anything. You know, you don't have to tell the truth even. You know, like you can just whatever it is in you that needs to kind of come out. That's what it is. I mean,
Speaking of that freedom, I find a strength in poetry that I can't find outside of it. Speaking my truth just in plain everyday conversation or whatever. I find an inner strength through poetry, and I think it's because I also see it as a collaborative process. It's not just me expressing. I am expressing through traditional language, which is much older than I am and comes with this, ancestral line of custodianship and care and strength and pride and staunchness and so it's not just me. I'm I'm working with all of that on the page, and then when I speak it, it's this kind of reciprocal exchange that happens. It's not just me. I don't know if.
I reckon what they'd say if my old people could listen to me speaking badly speaking Bunjalung, I think they'd probably go, "You're right, son. It's all right." Our way is not like this has to be pronounced this way.
Yeah.
I'm a real dilettante when it comes to a real pedant when it comes to dilettante. I'm a real pedant when it comes to pronunciation. How white fellas pronounce our words, but I think for us, like it's much more relaxed, and we've got to be kind to ourselves in that language learning to just go, it's all right, it's okay. Yes, they're heavily loaded. The power in those words is just phenomenal. It's just so, but it's not heavy. I think you should wear it lightly. I think we should.
I think it's also the beauty of being able to learn to listen in language, not just speak in language.
Indeed.
So when we hear our own words, like I tell people, our language heals country when we speak it on country. Yeah, she knows when where we're speaking it from, not just why we're speaking it, or not just the pronunciation or the, country knows the intent of why we speak it, and when we're, and it's a healing thing to be able to sit and listen to people speaking my language. My mother's in the audience and she's exceptional with our language. And for me to sit and watch her and my son converse in my language, I get to listen in language. And sometimes I won't know what they're talking about. And I stay with the biggest grin on my face because I don't know what they're talking about. And it sounds absolutely beautiful. And one day I will sit down and learn my language properly. When I've got a spare couple of minutes.
Couple of months.
But
a lifetime.
It's beautiful to be able to listen to it and hear it spoken properly with that beautiful intent.
And just getting back to what you're saying, Daniel, or what was echoed from all of us, like something that, like some more wisdom from Auntie Ali. I remember I was in too much in here one time. Or many times, but one time I was sitting down with Ali when I was doing that, and she said, "You write to your own campfire," and it's that same essence, isn't it? Like, and I know that later we'll talk about power as well. But who are we writing for, and who are we writing to? Right? You just don't worry about anything else. You write to your own campfire.
Let's talk about power now, actually. Because there is an incredibly rich history of poetry within black activism. I'm thinking of people like Lionel Fogarty or Jarunu Knuckle, even songwriter Kev Carmody. Nicole, why do you think poetry as a form has been so widely accepted by blackfellas as a means to contend with power?
Oof.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just a nice easy one for you.
Big question. Look, I think poetry has an accessibility about it that other art forms don't have. And I think that's why it's a vehicle that's taken up. And I'm not just talking about poetry. Well, I'm not talking about poetry on the page. Spoken word and performance poetry. It's like that old thing of like, okay, I've got my soapbox moment. Here's my moment, my 2 minutes to speak my truth and have my say and have somebody listen to me, and I can do it in a free-form way. I don't have to worry about the rules and regulations. I can just speak from the heart and speak my truth. I think that's got a lot to do with it. But I don't come from that world, so I don't feel like I'm the best person to answer that question. I think there's others on the panel that have a lot more to say about that.
We're
Sorry.
we're born from storytellers, countless generations of storytellers, and poetry is a way for us to engage with the world in, I think was mentioned earlier, our languages are poetic in the way that they speak. So we've been poets forever. So to be able to grab their words as well, and we arm our words with our old people's stories. Yeah, we arm the English words and we shoot them forward. Yeah, we're able to fight back with our words through poetry, just in a different language. That's all.
And I also think there's something about the heartbeat, which is universal, right? So poetry is about beat. It's about rhythm. There's a music in poetry, particularly when you speak it. You're thinking about. We've all done. We'll all present like this. There's like this ticker in the background, and that is universal. That's deep within us as human beings. It's the crackle of the campfire, yes, but it's the heartbeat from in utero. And so music, the poetry is delivered like that. When it's delivered like that, it accords to something deep within us bodily, where it's embodied. Poetry is embodied in a way that speech is not, or conversation or any other kind of expression. It's almost like it is music, and that's deep within us, and that's why I think it translates, and that's why it's a great tool to contend with power, because it's so deeply felt. You can speak truth if that's what you need to do. You can do that through that heartbeat. It's so human, so human.
So when I was first approached to moderate this session, one of the things that Nicole and David asked was if I would like to read a poem of my own. And I have never said no so quickly because I don't write poetry.
Nor do I.
To start with. But I
know what I'm writing.
You don't write yet.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll see. We will. But I did start thinking about poems I love and poets that I really love. And I wanted to talk briefly about a line from a poem by Wiradjuri artist Jazz Money. She wrote, "If I write a poem, it's for the pen banned by my grandmother's hand." Banned from my grandmother's hand. That line was inspired by Jazz recognising her own ego when she found out that she was going to be published in a book. And it also kind of reminded her that it became something of like a manifesto for her career and how she wanted to approach it. And then kind of in the same evening of reminding myself of that work, I also started listening to Lulu, one of your pieces, which was a meditation on poetry. And you wrote about poetry as a letter to ancestors, And it reminded me that sometimes the power we are writing to or speaking to in this space is actually not the patriarchal, white, cis, all of... It is also our own power and our own... our ancestors, and I wonder if you could talk a little to that idea.
And I think that in that way, at least that type of power that I'm writing to feels like, for me in my own journey, the way I was brought up, that's more important to me. I lose energy over here doing that other thing. Of course, I do it in soft and gentle and sometimes direct ways when I need to, but like, same yarn, who am I accountable? Who am I doing this for? Like, I love writing and just imagining, like, look, Nanny, like, look who's waking up, like my little sister's learning language now as well, like, yeah. And as well, like, I think that, like, a narrow lens that's put on us, or, like, it doesn't always... I think that people would expect maybe that when we're speaking back, that we would be speaking back to that power, but, like, I'm on my own race, like, I'm, in my own lane talking for my old people, like what Ani Ali said, like, writing to my own campfire, for sure. I don't want to give oxygen to that stuff that makes me feel disempowered. I want to write to a bonfire, not something which is generative, right? That bonfire that's generative, not something else which is disempowering and like extracting maybe, and maybe seeks to swallow me. I want to be in front of that other thing, blowing air into that to keep it going, right? Yeah.
Do you want to give us a reading?
Yeah. Go on.
Now that we're all sort of in that space.
Yeah. I was going to read a poem about the tall ships, because I know this is going to be broadcast across BBC, but speaking of that power that we want to thread through, I decided to read a poem about my mum. It's called It Is Held in the Mouth. I know your tracks are marking the mangrove. I worry about how cold you'll be in winter. Your porous bones wrapped in growing muscle since your 92 Corolla got lifted last month and you took my brother's bike. 6 months by another name, be it any other name. Don't say our break, our stubborn necessary fracture. Call a grudge, make a sorry meant. Ma. If there are eagles on the other side, wait for me.
Thank you. We've been talking a little about form, but I also want to talk about, I guess, medium might be, or material. I'm not sure what the right word is, but there can be, not always, but there can be a tension between what's gained and lost, between performance and page. And I'm really interested in hearing from you, Rob, about, as a champion slam poet, 2023 champion, slam poet champion, because you do also write for the page, like how does that intention shift your work?
Kind of doesn't. I write in my own voice. And when, like, I'm really good friends with Luca Lesson, amazing amazing poet, actor, like rapper. And I've been friends with him for so long that I say that when I read his stuff, I read in his voice. I know him so well. Another friend of mine, Will Small, who's a great writer, and he performs so well. I read it in his voice. So I write in my own voice. So performing, like, people can read it, but then it's like, this is how it's read. So I did an exercise at the Australian Museum one time where I handed out my poem and said, you guys go away, come up with how to perform it and come back and show me. So they all got to do their version of my poem, I Will Speak Now. And then at the end I said, cool, now this is how it was written for me to read. And I performed it. There were so many different interpretations of it, of how it was. And I've done so many different interpretations of how to read that same poem that in the book it's written one way, that way, and it stays that way. But when I perform it, depends on who's in the audience or where the audience is or where it's coming from. It kind of changes a bit. So it's different, but it's the same. Same, but different. I'm not sure if that answers your question enough for...
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, keep talking. But Nicole, you're a trained mezzo-soprano. And I feel like I'm curious about how that plays into your poetry, or does music play into the way that you write or perform?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we've talked about how musical poetry is, especially language. Our traditional languages are just so beautiful and so musical, and there's that beautiful onomatopoeia that happens with listening to country and speaking our language. And I am so heavily influenced by that in the work that I do now. So I was classically trained, but I ran away from it for a long time after my experiences at the Conservatorium of Music in Sydney. But I was drawn to poetry back then. I was singing a lot of French and German art song because I loved composers that set music to poetry and how they interpreted the words sonically. And I find now that across mediums, poetry is part of my process. So sometimes I will write a poem and then it will be a poem, but it will also ask me to be a song. And so I will weave some of that into a song, or I will put some of that into a soundscape for an artwork that I'm making. So it's, poetry and that musicality of poetry becomes part of my artistic process as a whole. Yeah.
Daniel, did you ever consider slam poetry as a... why did you turn to the page?
For slam. I think it's, I'm absolutely in awe of anyone who can perform poetry in public. But I really, I think of myself as being just a bit shame being on this panel. I'm not someone who I don't think I'm particularly good. And I think perhaps when I published my book last year, I threw some poetry in because I thought this needs to go somewhere, and I also wanted to get back at someone. I wanted to avenge something, and someone said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't be like that. It's like, you can't use poetry that way. You can't use publishing that way. You can't use a book that way." I'm like, I don't know about that.
Watch me.
You got something really big that you can't. What I'll say is, the recitation of poetry and the intentionality in it when you do it, when you say perform it as a slam artist might do, you are putting it out into the world and you're oxygenating this idea and spreading it out. When it's published as something different, it becomes this thing you can't erase. And having worked with a microphone for 30 years, I'm a bit more convinced now of the power of the printed word to convey meaning and to convey a meaning that is full of intentionality. That's why I think about I used to think it was all about the performance, it's all about the actual saying of the words, but the actual seeing them on paper is also very powerful. So yeah, I did. Yeah, I got back at someone, and it was yes, it was an important thing for me. And once I did it, it's now gone. I don't have that feeling anymore. I can let go of it because I've put it into the public and I've said this is what this is. And no one who reads that poem will be in any doubt about what it's about. So yeah, I hate to say that. But that's true. It's true. It's true. There's something intentional too in publishing a certain poem as opposed to another.
What about? Oh, sorry, Rudi.
Yeah,
what about the interpretation, though? I kind of feel like once something is written down and published, the interpretation of it is out of your hands.
Totally.
Whereas with spoken word, you're in control of how it is read. You're
How
in control of
presented.
it, of delivering it, and how you want people to receive it.
There's a loss of control, I think, with once it's on the page. It's like, whoa, okay, well, it's like when an artist makes an artwork, it's like it's no longer theirs.
I think there's also something interesting about, you mentioned the kind of the temporary kind of element of a performance versus sort of the more permanence of something published. And this is perhaps my own preoccupation because I'm working in radio, which is an incredibly temporary form. But I also...
People think it's temporary, but it's not.
Yeah,
everything's recorded, right?
And increasingly less.
You can go back and listen to this.
Yeah.
Whenever.
So increasingly less now that podcasting has become more popular. Find us on the ABC Listen app. But I think that I'm always sort of, not always, but I'm often thinking about kind of the tension between, I guess, what, like speaking to the moment and how that will feel a week from now, a month from now, 10 years from now.
I sometimes read things that I've written, like even that first the poem that I read. I think I don't feel quite the same way.
Yeah.
Did I really write that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way
How would
about
you write it now?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And in that way, then, when you publish a book, it stops being a living archive. Hey,
That's
like
it.
it's still living because it's in a book, but it's not being added to. Like you can't.
It's like you draw a line.
You draw a line.
Now it doesn't matter because
it's
you've
rested.
That's the final.
That's it.
That's the final.
It is an archive, but less of a living archive now that it doesn't. It's not influenced by.
And it's also like it's like you've cut something out.
Right.
You know, like, and there it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you've
Here's a
eviscerated, and now that's you can walk away from it. It's like that's
feel
why
that
it fixed
too.
me. It temporarily fixed me to do that. To kind of put it out and just like that's it. I'm done with it. I can walk away from those feelings.
And I enjoyed the freedom of, when we spoke about other people's interpretation of what we're writing. Like I feel zero burden about that. I'm actually like quite excited to see what people. That's why I write quite, I guess, enigmatic. Everyone that reads my books like, be more clear, be more generous to the audience. It's like no, like. You can use it, you may have I'm talking about a feeling, you insert your own experience into it, that way that can be specifically medicinal to you. That helped as well, like as an emerging being self-conscious about what I would write and put out in the world. It was definitely helpful just to be excited about that element that, like you don't have control over the interpretation and I really don't mind. I hope it's helpful and medicinal.
So that's so powerful.
Because what's the other option? Crumble and don't write.
Everything is temporary and nothing is temporary as well. Like if you want to get, really hippie and spiritual about it. I write with this idea or philosophy that it is an exchange, and even if my performance is temporary because it's in this moment and then it's gone, it's not gone, it's still energetically out there, and it was part of this continuum of time and space and energy. And I think the written word is like that too. Yeah, it's published and it exists for a time, but will it exist in 200 years' time? Or, you know, how temporary is it?
It's like you've satisfied that urge, you know, like you've done what you need to, you've put those words together and you've put those thoughts together and then that's enough now. Like, oh, I'm done with that thought. And I don't know, it's really, I get a sense of like I said, relief when I've said that thing and now I don't have to feel it and I can let go of it. I can let go of the feeling.
We were initially going to have a fifth poet joining us, Phoebe Grainer. Unfortunately, she couldn't, but she did very kindly send a recording of her poem, so we might play that now.
Old cowboy hat. We were laughing, us mob, you telling us stories. Could listen forever. Felt like back in the day, you know, I told them. Happy to have made it this far. That was your answer. Never forget that voice. I'll never forget them stories, old fella. Can see those stories like they're my memories. You're the man from the moon, you know that? The man from the moon, fighting for your land until I called out to you in my dream. I could feel it. My voice, it vibrated through the universe. You heard it, the man from the moon. You sat on a chair in the dark, old body tired. You looked like you were busy in thought, but you came. I was relieved. There you are. White hair, knowing eyes. Then you were standing next to a tree, strong and solid. Somehow you were younger. Your hair was black. It was night. You looked up, and I could see the stars on your face. Remember when you drank from the river? That river was big. I drank the water too. What did it taste like for you? To me, it tasted like old people, old lives, old times. That night, I left all the curtains open. Dark clouds, a storm, lightning filled the sky. Wind gently blowing through the house. Cool. I watched from the window in the black. Peace. It felt like peace, light. When they told me, I called you, thought about you all week before. I called you, told Mum I called you, and Nana called you too. You will always be the man from the moon, that boy sitting on his grandma's lap. He loved her so much. I hope you were with her. A good daughter. I said your name. Did you hear it? I called out to you. Did you hear it? I said it. I said it. I said it. I think it's in the air, Mum said. My calls are in the air. Where are you? Where have you gone? She said. I can't say your name anymore, she said. I think I know where. Old fella, you've gone back to your moon.
It's beautiful.
In part because we've been talking about how things might shift in a moment. There is a little voice that was in the back of my head wondering how Phoebe might have changed her reading if she was here. But so grateful that she sent something that we could share. Nicole, in your role at Red Room Poetry, part of your job is to, I guess, like foster new talent emerge. Yeah. I guess I just want you to tell me a little bit about what that looks like and how you balance your own craft with supporting other writers.
I am indebted to Red Room and Sister Curly Saunders for encouraging me and my practice. Back in 2018, I was working for an arts organisation and Red Room came to do some workshops, and I was put on as the staff member that day. And Ali Cobby Eckerman was there as well, and her and Curly said, well, you're with us for the day, so you better write something. So I did, and we ended up sharing, in the circle afterwards, and Curly tapped me on the shoulder and she said, sis, you're not bad. You should keep writing. And so I was encouraged as like this, non-poet, as we often think we are before we start writing poetry, to keep writing. And I then was commissioned by Red Room for a number of years and then took up the job of looking after First Nations projects. So it's really important for me to find those new emerging voices and to encourage them. And I know that, us blackfellas are storytellers, we're all poets, we're all artists. It's in our DNA, it's what we've been doing for thousands of years. We can all do it. And when I say emerging, I'm not just talking about the young ones coming through. It's really important for me to also find and give voice to our older generations who haven't had those opportunities to share those stories in those ways. And so finding elders and aunties and uncles and encouraging them to write poetry and to say, no, you can write and you don't have to keep within the boundaries that we were told were there when we were in school. Like, it's much more freer, and you know how to do it. You're good. You're good. But it's hard to know who's out there unless you're actually out in the community running workshops and having yarns with people. There's so much talent and so many stories to tell. So, in my role, I try and put feelers out and tell mob, like, if there's someone I should know about, if there's someone out there that you think should be commissioned or I should have a yarn with, like, tell me, let me know. And they do, and I'm so grateful for that. I found so many aunties and uncles that way that we've been able to commission over the last 24 months. Yeah.
There was a quote by Arundhati Roy. Says there's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only the deliberately silenced and the preferably unheard. So I think it's about engaging in that space as people that I'm in a very privileged position to be sitting here and doing this. And I know there are voices out there that need to be heard, that are, pushed away or deliberately silenced, that we need to make sure, I said the other night that people were I was asked once about what do I think about amplifying Indigenous voices. I was like, you don't have to amplify anything if you just shut up. Yeah, you don't have to, because we have our voices, and sometimes people are purposely not listening.
So give up the mic, this is a principle I use. Like, why am I holding onto this microphone? What am I? And it's always about opening. My approach to work is when I go to interview someone, just the mic's yours. You tell me what the story is. And this is my whole approach to journalism. Is like, which is probably why I'm not particularly beloved of the profession. I have a really loose approach to it. It's like, not loose. It's actually very kind of. The rule is be open and listen. Stop talking.
I was going to say the thing that I have learnt from Daniel that has been the most valuable is that we are not the most important
You are the
voice
least-
in the room.
you
We
are
are the
the
least
least
important,
important.
actually,
Yeah.
which is why so often our job is to just shh.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's the thing my mum always said. Where's the humility?
I'm also thinking about something that you said last night, Rob, which was that there is a lot of talk about truth telling, not a lot of truth listening. I am very aware that we're close. Oh, I might get you to read to do your poem now, Rob. Actually,
Okay. Kind of coming from that truth listening space and aware of why we're here, where we are. This poem, I'm reading it today is the International Day of the Victims of Forced Disappearance. And this poem is kind of about that. At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we will remember some of them. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember most of them. But not the ones who were black and poor, left on foreign shores after the war. They fought with the Boers, but don't worry if you've never heard this story before. We remember them. Black trackers called, but people still, used like trinkets on windowsills, because they had them good bush skills to hunt the ones the empire killed, but still you don't know anything about them. But we remember them. Families talk about those good men between families of circles, with circles of friends, the ones they sent to the new world's end to die for king and country. They were collateral damage, classified as acceptable waste, and on the boats back home they take up too much space, so along with the horses, of course, they were left by the king in another country. All because the colony became of age. The colony turned a brand new page. They wrote their laws, and the first one was colloquially called the White Australia Policy. Let's play a game. Who in their white mind would write laws to stop dark-skinned people from entering their shores via boat? I digress. Because at Port Elizabeth they have a memorial for their horses. But like trinkets left on windowsills to hunt the ones the empire killed, to swallow it, it's a bitter pill, but they were left, and we will speak their story still. Because of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, they only remember some of them. But at the going down of the sun and in our morning, we will remember them.
That is pretty much it, guys. There's no...
Mic drop.
Mic drop. That's, please join me in thanking Lulu, Daniel, Rob and Nicole. And I mean me, Rudi.
Stick around for the next session.
Yes, yeah. Oh my goodness. The housekeeping things. Stick around for the next session. There is so much going on today, tomorrow, Sunday. No, I don't know. Just today and tomorrow. I absolutely know the program back to front. There's because I'm not doing this
book signing.
Yes, tables for signing outside. There is also a program with a QR code. If you don't know how to use a QR code yet, I am not sure what you've been doing the last few years. But it has the full program, and it is way better at telling you what's going on than I am. So please use it. But yeah, thank you so much.